If you think about professional sport at the moment, so I often hear on TalkSport on my commutes or whatever, you think the players would organise it. You think the players would pull their shirts up or roll their sleeves up and have a go. That all starts from character in the younger age groups. We're linking back to a lot of young people who are in an environment of tell from school or from maybe from home. So how can we empower that bit? And last time I checked, no one's getting sacked at training. So it's a great time to try it.
Rus Smith is our next guest on the Game Plan Coaching Podcast, and Rus is a proper community coach and coach developer. He's spent over 25 years investing in people and relationships in his local area. It's not just about turning up and running sessions, it's much more than that. Rus is the co-founder of the Black Country Coaches Club, which is a not-for-profit organisation supporting young coaches and grassroots delivery across Dudley, Sandwell, and the wider Black Country. This year, Rus was a finalist at the UK Coaching Awards for Coach Development Practitioner of the Year, which has recognised his long-term impact on the work with young coaches and the communities he serves. In the episode, Rus shares a fantastic quote, which I think should be etched in stone somewhere. As coaches, we change a life, not just a bib, which for me exemplifies the whole of coaching at a community level. And we also look at how Rus has innovated building pathways for young coaches to learn, to be placed in roles and be paid as a coach, which helps local organisations solve their real workforce challenges. Rus has been a consistent person for young aspiring coaches to lean on and offers trust and encouragement and real responsibilities, not just qualifications. In the conversation, we dig into empowering young leaders and the value of that. He also offers that as a coach, we shouldn't be the only voice. Let's involve the parents, other stakeholders, and bring them in as allies. If you're interested in youth sports, community-led initiatives, then you'll enjoy this a lot. Let's get into the conversation with Rus Smith. Rus, we don't know each other that well, but we've spoken a few times. And you know how when married couples kind of get into that habit when they can finish each other's sentences? I wondered if you might be able to finish some of my sentences to start our conversation today. So I'll say the first half of the sentence and you share with us whatever comes to the front of your mind. Does that sound okay?
Okay, great, yeah.
Okay, so at its heart, coaching is about
people, smiles, and the black bits of rubber crumb in your car.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And then your Hoover. Yeah, definitely. A good session should feel like
it was effortless and you didn't have to do too much.
Very nice. The biggest myth in coaching is
it's all about winning. What are we winning?
Nice one. The hardest part of coaching is
when you haven't engaged well with your stakeholders and it's raining and there's a goal to put away.
The realities of being on the ground in the miserable
Sometimes
December
you can
weather.
make your own island of you, and then others. Yeah, so isolation can be at a time coaching.
The most powerful thing a coach can say is,
"I trust you. Have a go."
Love that. I'm fully on board with that. The best environment feels
two-way, reciprocal.
If you stripped everything back, a coach is here to
change a life, not just a bib.
That's meaningful. Love that. Last two. Okay. The one thing coaches forget is
you don't have to do everything.
And finally, if I wasn't a coach, I'd
really like to work in a national park.
Really?
Like forest manager or something like that. Anything outdoors. If I wasn't a coach, I'd want to do something outdoors in nature.
Can't take you away from being outdoors. Love that. Excellent. Thanks for playing along. Rus, it's lovely to have you on the podcast and thank you for joining me. The first answer you gave when I asked, at its heart, coaching is about people and relationships. Tell us a bit more about that and why is that so important to you?
So I'll contextualise it. I've been coaching for 25 years. I soon realised that it's about the relationships, the name, the making someone feel better, confident, more successful that they can achieve. And sometimes that's not just by scoring a goal or making a pass. Sometimes that might just be through, do you know what, I feel better about myself. And those relationships kind of cross over a lot. And I suppose I'm one of the lucky people that I've got people who I may have coached in a primary school who are now a developer and help me in some of the work I do. So that long-termism of making a change for life outcomes is it's really hard to measure 10, 15 years in advance. So if it's not just the game or the sport that you play, you know, you're still going to know or see these people hopefully many years to come. And for me, that measurement over time is something that's really, you know, adopted my development and philosophy about. It's all about people, really, because whether they carry on as a coach, whether they turn into a brickie, plumber, accountant, whatever, you still have a relationship. And that's the stuff for me that's really made a big difference, especially within the last 15 of my 25 years as a coach.
How did you get to this point? Have you always felt like that, or have your beliefs changed over time?
I suppose like a lot of people, I would have wanted to be a performance coach earlier on in my 20s, but then I did work in performance and I kind of didn't like it because it was very much, yes, there was people elements to it, but then there was a yes or no or opinion related to retain release. And for me, I understand that's a part of the pathway to performance, but I'm probably found that I was more about empowerment of people. Rather than the answer of no, it's just the answer of not yet. Have you thought about? And could you become a coach leader? And I suppose that's where I sit right now, really. I have a lot of 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds who are all great deliverers, whether they've been a player, whether they've just been a volunteer, whether they have a family member with a disability, whether they are a home carer, whatever, you know, they've all got the people skills to help others to be active, play sport, or do, you know, a pathway of a traditional coach in a club. And I think that's a big thing that I try and help with clubs and sports groups at the minute and say, well, actually, some of your 13, 14, 15-year-olds in your club now can be your next you, but have you offered, do you know, a pathway to do that or a program? And that's kind of where at present I am a lot with a lot of the coach development that we do, having young people lead, but young people lead, they might not necessarily have a career in sport, but that communication, connection, turning up on time, organisation skills all kind of help to shape them. And back to what I've said earlier, there's been primary school kids now who are now developers or run their own business or have a professional role in some of my day-to-day work now, and that's been a long change of knowing the person really to help that to happen.
With your focus on young coaches and young leaders, what have you noticed when you started supporting them? What's the experience of the people taking part like when they're being coached by maybe a peer or somebody who's a bit more like them?
Few answers here. So first answer is the landscape changed a lot for them, because most national governing body or I suppose industry things went online for them to learn to coach. Now, I don't think I learned to coach online, but also how you access that stuff is quite hard as well. So is it something I want to do online or is it something I want to do experiential? Now, my beliefs is it's experiential, because if you can see it, you can do it. What I find is a lot of them don't know that coaching is a pathway, because a lot of schools or careers advice they get is you've never been a player, so you're not going to be a coach, or coaching's not a real job. Why don't you think about accountancy? So, you know, and I can add value to that because my own son is 16 and coaches for 4 hours a week, and his career advice was, have a go on this computer or you might be a farmer. And his assistant principal said coaching is not a real job to him as well. So if that's the careers advice that happens in a secondary school in Dudley, I'm pretty sure that in other places that happens too. And I think the last part of that answer will be is not many of them have been, I'm not going to use the word coach, not many of them have been empowered to lead. A lot of their coaching has probably been more autocratically say, do, tell, and they've never had the chance to, I suppose, be the leader themselves. But they soon learn in the experiential learning when we go, there's 30 kids. They're not listening to me. Well, what, have you tried? Have you tried? And that's the pathway that we find works really well and successfully, especially in some of my work now.
Yeah, love that. And you're completely right. When I was younger, I don't remember coaching ever being on the table as a legitimate career pathway. You've mentioned the word empowering a couple of times. It sounds like a really obvious question, but what does that mean to you?
I'll give you some learning tools or things, and then you go and put them into action. You don't need me to do it. You need to have a try. And I think there's a lot of young people that don't get that because of there's a risk or there's a cost or I can't trust a 14-year-old. Some of these 14-year-olds are better than 37-year-olds that I come across within clubs or industry because of they see it a bit better for the kids because they're nearer to the kids. And I'll give you a little anecdotal story of this. So one of the programs that I'm involved in has provision for children with SEND needs, but it's run by teenagers who are the siblings of those children. So they run holiday programs after school or turn up and play type bits. And one of the best activities they do is Nerf battles. Now, it's not coaching, but it's fun-based, raises your heart rate. If we wanted to put it back into sport principles, it's athletics, yeah? You got to run away from stuff. You got to use agility. But kids just want to do a mix of things and not sometimes one sport for 2 hours. And because those teenagers there in question understand the care needs or the differentiation needs for their sibling, there are other kids there too, they just get it. And really all we do is sit back and go, crack on. And if they've got a new idea, we let them do the new idea as well, and we just ensure it's safe and there's a register and stuff like that. But we put the learnings into action by empowering them to have a go, and it's okay if it goes wrong.
Just picking up on the last thing you said then, it's okay if it goes wrong. Creating that environment where the people taking part feel like they are empowered and can make mistakes, does it change the way that people engage? Do you see something different in the behaviours they bring?
Yeah. I mean, that's one example of older siblings with younger children with disabilities. But like, well, I used to work at a school, secondary school, years back, and I was always sent the naughty kids or the so-called naughty kids because you know what, there wasn't a rule for them. It was sit down, listen, and if it didn't work. So engaging also with those who are risky behaviours or those who are a bit cheeky or whatever, that's great for me. I love that because those are the ones that know the people skills, connection skills that actually can engage the other kids who may be on that similar pathway or, have that stereotype or bias against them. And that's really effective too. And in the past, we've done some great work with some of those kids who've become great community members. And one little throwaway story for you that back in my time working in Sandwell, so Sandwell's West Bromwich area, one of those, shall we say, risky kids, we did some work with him, but 15 years later I was on the plane on the way home from a holiday and my son said to me, "Dad, bloke behind you knows you." And I was like, "Nah, he don't know me. I'm on a plane. Why would he know me?" But it was that lad. And he was on holiday with his own family and he was telling me about his job he does, his own kids. He was telling me about some of the programs we used to do. And that really, what I said before, the intervention you might make now can pay off. You might not see it in a week, but you might see it in a year, 2, 4. And we're unfortunate that we work in a world or a sector that measures things every 2 to 4 years. So you don't necessarily see the follow through of that. And that long-term empowerment actually gives a brain or a behaviour change to help out with how I might act to others, and having some responsibility and experience doing that is what really works, we find.
Take us back a little bit so people can really grasp the nature of the work that you do. I think I first came into contact with you understanding more about the Black Country Coaches Club and some of the amazing projects that you run. So for people who haven't heard of the club and your work, would you give us a bit of a whistle-stop tour?
Yeah, right. So make it easy. I've worked in football all my life. whether it be West Bromwich Albion, whether it be Aston Villa I worked for a time, the FA, a range of stuff. And I've worked in education. School in West Bromwich, I work at Wolverhampton University. So education and clubs is kind of my thing where I've worked, right? I used to work for an organisation called Street Games, and that was working more with NGBs, etc., helping them with more youth-friendly offers. But to the chat we're having today, essentially, Black Country Coaches Club was COVID, I couldn't deal with everything going online because it didn't work for me. And I know my own son's experience when he was at school, didn't work for him. And the amount of relationships I had pre-COVID with grassroots football clubs, youth programs, charity organisations, etc., just all gone. And rather than me wait, what we did was I went on a bike ride and met my friend James. Whether I kept the COVID rules or not, I wasn't really bothered, but I met him on the canal and we had a chat and we was like, what should we do? So we came up with that. So Black Country Coaches Club was to be a community investment company, which is not for profit. So any profits we make, we reinvest back into provisions for young coaches, predominantly from Dudley and Sandwell. And we started off with the football clubs. We started to do some stuff, outdoor spaces as COVID stuff was dropping, etc. Then we had some of the organisations from young people who we'd worked with in the past who were setting up new things for them. So there's one called Any Girl Netball, there's West Bromwich Basketball Club, there's Strike Youth. You know, all these people were starting stuff, but they didn't have a workforce. So how did we help them to get the new workforce? So really, roll on 5 years, and it's great that yesterday was our 5-year anniversary of the organisation. We run 2 projects. One is Passport to a Placement. So that's some learning that then links to a placement, whether you're 13, 14, 15, 16. So you would do some stuff, Youth Sport Leader Award, Introduction to Multisport, child or youth-friendly safeguarding, first aid that's real, that's not online. You get to do the Annie stuff and all that sort of jazz. Mm-hmm. But then you give back 10 to 50 hours, and that could be already in your sports club, or it could be in a new setting because you don't have a sports club. And last year there were around 750 who've gone through that programme, and that's Black Country and wider. So we're getting traction now in other areas who want us to help them. So I work with a great organisation called Lichfield Community Sport who do that too, as an example. And then the second part to what we do is Passport to Paid Work. So we have some great 15-year-olds who get paid. Now they're helping to run half camp, so holiday and food programs, which are government initiatives, or traditional holiday programs, or turn up and play, after school clubs. And I'll give you one good example. Liv started with us at 14. She's now 19. She might be 20. She might tell me up. She's probably banked 300 hours, but she gets paid now for holiday delivery. She's even taken a role as a swim teacher. She's gone on to be in teacher training. She will be the next, deliverers influencing the young people of next 10 years' time, which is really what we're trying to do, is help that passport, because it's not clear and linear in the sports sector, especially in community sport. There is no, here is the career advice to become a coach. Now, your national governing bodies all have a pathway that align back to their national governing body pathway sport, but anything that's not that is really murky. So we've tried to make it clear and helpful, pathway to a placement, pathway to paid work. And whatever might come from that, at least you've learned turning up on time, working with other people, teamwork, organisation skills, differentiation, behaviour management. And think about how many jobs those things fall into. And what we really want is that future army of people who are prepared for future work. Now, we're not an employability organisation. We just want to make a difference with young coaches. But maybe it is employability that we're doing secretly through coaching. And I think what we do now has really changed from when we met on a bike. Because what we were really just looking to do when we met on the bike 5 years ago was, how do we carry on doing stuff with the clubs, with the traditional coaches, with some volunteers and stuff like that? So we've really shifted that change to the 13 plus.
This is proper community work. And clearly from where you're pitching it with those young coaches coming through the journey, the impact will just knock on to the next generation of children playing the games, playing the sports that they're playing, and there's a sustainability to it. When you look at the programs that you're delivering and you talk about employability, how do you know stuff's going well?
Because I see young people who get paid in jobs. This is 5 years on. So I'd probably say, utopia for us is we have lots of other charities, CICs, football in the community programs, etc., who work with us. We empower them, they empower their young people, but lo and behold, that's their next staff members.
Yeah.
And we're 5 years in where we've had people who started at 14, and I'll give you a great one. Tom Wilkes started at 14, pre-COVID. He was helping his dad run a football team, and we're rolling on 5 years now. He's a middle manager at Aston Villa Foundation. So he now knows that anyone who comes through the things that he's come through, well, I probably might give him an interview, or I might give him an opportunity because they've seen it, done it, lived it. They know what that might look like. And I think that that's a real long-term change that we're trying to make, that experiential and having someone to believe in you in coaching can really make a difference.
Amazing stuff. I'm just circling on my notepad the words empowering, experiential learning. I've written down Nerf battles in big letters here. For me, that's a real reminder of going where young people are at. Don't be constrained to what we've done in the past, but give them the tools. For our regular listeners, they'll know that in every episode, we ask guests to share something unique in our ever-growing game plan. So this is a shared playbook of stories and ideas and lessons that coaches could draw on. And every guest who comes along adds something new to the game plan. So what is it that you would like to add in?
I think the key thing for your game plan, and something you might link as a top tip or something to try, is it's really helpful when you're not the only voice. So my point being, linking back to the empowerment chat we've had before, you might be a traditional doing your best parent coach with a team, or you might be in a school, you might be on a career pathway. Sometimes if you let the others, meaning your participants, lead, that also develops character. And developing character means that they don't sometimes need you all the time. So let's take a simple analogy of football as an example, because that's the background I'm from. I can't kick a ball if I'm the coach. I'm not on that pitch. So often what I might be saying or calling might just be noise. Whereas if I practice that in training where the players have the voice, it's probably going to link to your match day too. And that's where you build the characters who might help out motivation of others, who might build someone up, who might link into organisation or how they are structured. You have to practice it though, or have to try it, because it won't just come naturally. You might have to build that in as part of your session where you sit back and go, here is the challenge or the prompt, over to you. And traditionally in coaching, you see the coach who runs up and down the side shouting a lot. So people have a peer perception of what coaching is. But if you try it, you often get better results because the players have made the change or the difference and given the voice to help. You've got to try it. So enabling others to give the voice really would be a top tip from me to see how it would go.
Brilliant. I'm thinking about my own experiences of coaching now and trying to do some of that myself. How when players haven't done it before, or any athlete or any young person, they find it quite difficult. And with that comes loads of errors, loads of mistakes, and practice can become clunky. There's maybe a higher error count than there is normally. But by staying with the trouble and giving them the space to figure this out for themselves, obviously knowing if you need to step in to give a bit of help here and there, but by creating the freedom for them to have a go at it and fail and learn from that and move forwards in terms of their long-term development is huge. I'll just play back what you said. Helpful when you're not the only voice. Letting participants lead develops character. And I'm just reflecting as I'm talking around how a simple, potentially very small change in the way that you behave in the practice or from the sidelines could be incredibly enabling and empowering for the players that you're coaching.
Well, if you think about professional sport at the moment, so I often hear on Talk Sport on my commutes or whatever, you think the players would organise it, you think the players would pull their shirts up or roll their sleeves up and have a go. That all starts from character in the younger age groups. Can you allow that to happen? If we always tell, they're never going to say. We're linking back to a lot of young people who are in an environment of tell from school or from maybe from home. So how can we empower that bit? And last time I checked, no one's getting sacked at training. So it's a great time to try it because your risks are minimal, and the only perception that you might feel is looking at you is the parents, if you are coaching youth sports, go, he's not saying anything. They're not doing anything. So therefore they're not coaching. So you might need to align with the stakeholders, parents, to say, we're going to try them taking the lead. And what we mean by that is, so it goes on to match day so that they can help to change games and have a voice and a character rather than us telling them. Because no parent will ever deny that that's a bad idea, because in real life you want people to have some resilience, some character, some communication to make decisions to become a better human.
Helpful when you're not the only voice. Brilliant advice. I love that, and it resonates with lots of things we've spoken about in the past, including Play Their Way, where we talk about voice, choice and journey. And creating moments in your practice where players can take risks and try things out and do things they wouldn't normally do. The knock-on effects of that, the ripple effect, is absolutely huge.
There must be lots of coaches who listen to this and have stood on the side and gone, I can't hear you. But did you practice it? It's the same. Yeah. You need to practice those things because in a peer perception society where you don't want a fear of failure or you don't want people to feel like, well, it's risky, so I'm not going to bother. You got to practice that stuff. And even if you practice it for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, every other week, whatever, it will help replicate that from training to match day.
Coaching friend Russell Earnshaw shared on his podcast, The Magic Academy, shared this provocation once. If you weren't allowed to coach during the game, how would that change the design of your practice? That is a fantastic question, because I think coaches would think very differently about how much they solve the problems on behalf of the players or how much they set and create the problems for them to solve themselves.
100%. And I think, like, as a coach, we may have an ego. We may look at results. We all, when asked the question, may say we're all about development, but are we? What's development? Are we developing the person, or are we developing the person for better results? Often hand in hand, better development becomes results. And within the traditional coaches I work within, I often get the frustrated under 7s, under 8s, under 9s coach who goes, well, we played another team and they were amazing. Yeah, but they are still have a bedtime story. They still play Lego and you have them for 2 hours a week. So the better you develop them and these things kick in, it's not a quick fix.
And I think anybody working in youth sport needs to remember that children are not mini adults. And we need to treat them differently. 100%. Think about the environment we want them to step into and keep stepping back into every time they come to take part.
And there's a line there, right? So often coaches say to me, we can't talk about winning. And I go, why can't you talk about winning? Is it winning or is it winning at all costs in the detriment of child development? They're two different things. Nobody goes out to lose, but you might need to train that with how you give them a voice. So if someone needs some help on the pitch, rather than you have to shout across, could your teammate help them? But the teammate need the voice to do that, to practice that. And that would be the same across not just football, netball, basketball, predominant team sports. And I think it's that character building, and I'll say it again, that's massive, because no one wants their children as an adult to not have character. Everyone wants them to be resilient adults, but we need to help that to happen on the way. And that's a part of much as coaching is, as making a good technical pass.
Final part of our conversation for today is some game-changing advice. Now, when we've framed this in other podcasts, we say that this advice is hopefully something that's practical for coaches to go and use. Maybe it's a takeaway that coaches might go and apply straight away in their own coaching environment. They might edit it to suit their context, or they might just reflect on it now and come back to it later. So have you got some game-changing advice that you think coaches would really benefit from?
Right, I'm going to give you a couple. Number one, analysis. I'm not saying you need £1,000 camera. I'm not saying you need all the fancy technology, but I'm pretty sure the better you involve your stakeholders, just to keep a little tally of how many times we've done X, Y, or Z, that can then help you out with some insight to when you might have your coaching moments, team talks, etc., etc. Now, the reason why I say this is I'm a firm believer in the better you work with your stakeholders, the better outcomes you get. And often the ones who are most vocal, it's probably because they have I used to play, or I watched it on the telly, or they think they could do better than you. So if you involve them in the analysis side, post-it note, tally, they're less likely to try and get you the sack in your volunteer role. They're more likely to be a part of your coaching team to help you out with what you're trying to do. So that's my first tip. Use some simple notational analysis.
You mentioned stakeholders a few times. So are we talking about parents predominantly, or other people in that environment?
Yeah, so could be parents, could be your siblings who go and watch, could be committee members in predominantly youth club sport, could be teachers, others who are there who have an interest in the children. We're going to class as stakeholders.
Okay, nice way to define it. I just wanted to check because I think it's a really important point, because there's a bigger circle of people around those kids.
And I encourage anyone who's never looked at Gordon McClelland's work of working with parents to start there, because they're not your enemy. They just are ill-informed or haven't been engaged, and that helps you out. It can really help you out, have a great ethos and help out with your coaching. Secondly, dependent on where you stand will be where you can coach. So what I mean by that is everything looks different dependent on your positioning. So if I want to influence and improve the end goal of an invasion game, which is a shot, a throw or a basket, whatever, I can't really see what my players see. Now, I can't become a player because last time I checked, I don't fit the under-14s category, but sometimes might need some perspective on that. Now, whether that might be that your players give you the feedback, or if you have some non-starters or some people who are rotating or whatever, just that little view elsewhere can really give you a different picture. And in most traditional sports, we stand at the side. That doesn't really give us a good overview of what your players see. So even if that's an angle view, or even if that's one of your others, or sometimes there's rules that you can't stand near, right? But that different viewpoint can really see it differently, because we might say spread out because we stood here and I can only see the heads of 15 kids. But if I stand there, I might not see that. I might see that the big space, but it's more on the left. So it might just help you to inform more technical or tactical decisions based around what you are observing.
So coaching analysis and coaching position being your two takeaways. I'd love to just pick up on the coaching position. Again, Rusty, he's come to the front of my mind today, but Russell Unshaw, I heard him talk about flight path. Where are the positions that you put yourself as a coach, whether that's in practice or in games, to be able to see what you need or want to see, but also to be able to interact with the people that you want to interact with. I always feel sorry for the left back or the right back in a football game who's constantly running up and down past their coach and seems to get the brunt of the noise, shall we say, which is coming on from the sidelines. So we can be more creative with that. And I love the idea that A, you're engaging with stakeholders, but B, using different players, using your bench, using others to share information, to find out stuff about the opposition, to bring it back into you. There's a world of resource out there that perhaps we just don't tap into enough.
There must be coaches on here, and I meet them all the time. I go, what do I do with my subs? They're always asking me to come on. Of course they are. So if you send them on a scouting mission, or send them on a little walk around, those eyes are just as good as what you have there, and it utilises within the rules and what you're trying to do, but will also help their understanding too.
Yeah. And you also just mentioned about the stakeholders as well, and I love the turn of phrase that you used. They're either ill-informed or haven't been engaged. Now, there's lots of coaches who I've spoken to over the years who talk about parents, the challenge of parents, and parents are a problem. And if not considered, they possibly could be. But I love the way that you've put it. It's just an opportunity to be able to connect with this group of people who can make such a difference to the experience of the children. And it maybe just requires us as coaches to think differently about how we get them on board and involved in what we do.
100%. They see their young person 160 hours in a week, right? So in our term time, they got school as well. So they're probably seeing them 100 hours a week. So your input for the 2, 3, 4, 5 hours a week, if you can engage the stakeholders well to take those lessons home and remind and do, and they're on board with you, that will really help. When it's them versus us, which I see a lot of frustrations of coaches, you've made that happen by not engaging your stakeholder, or your club hasn't told you that at the start. And I find that this is a big part of the digitalisation of how beginner coaches are accessing information. They don't have the top tips. They don't have some experiential learning or peers where someone has helped them with these ideas. They've just logged on and lo and behold become a coach.
Hence the reason you need more people for young coaches to be able to lean on to get some help, to be that sounding board.
I often say to quite a few of the newer dad coaches, let's go traditional, right? And I say, you know, when you're at work and they tell me what they do, and I go, well, do you have to work with other people? Yeah. And I said, well, do you involve them? Yeah. And I said, well, why have you not done that here? No one told me. I didn't know. I just thought it was like match of the day where I turn up. But it's not, because your workers are getting paid. Whereas in youth sports, they go home, and if they haven't played or if they're upset or something, that's going to be happening in the car, and then that parent's going to be telling them, and then that parent's going to tell another parent, and before you know it, your WhatsApp's going, and it's Sunday, and you've already given up 5 hours, and you don't need to give up another 3. But you got involved because you took it personal, whereas that can all be prevented if you engage them at the start. And even if you do that, touch points throughout the year, they're not bad people. They're there to support their child, of which you're supporting them as well. And that's where the youth coaches I work with works really well, because we're trying to link some of those with an adult. So then the adult only has the responsibility of the organisation, maybe first aid, maybe safeguarding, so that the child does all the coaching. And when I say child, teenager, in training, and the kids listen more to them than they do someone's dad, because that someone's dad goes, well, I'm not your dad today, I'm your coach. And there's all sorts of different dynamics that go on. And, you know, we need a workforce to coach, but we often forget that 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds are better at doing this because they can do the demo than the parent who stepped forward. The parent with the young leader, magic, works really well.
What a brilliant place to end the conversation. Just to recap a few of the headlines I've got in front of me. Empowering young people, make learning experiential. Development only really happens over time. Coaches can play a role as a problem setter rather than a problem solver. Helpful when you're not the only voice, and involve your stakeholders.
100% involve your stakeholders.
Russ, thank you for being a brilliant guest on the podcast. It's been lovely to see you.
Thank you very much, folks, and hopefully you understood my Black Country accent voice, and hope to hear and see from you soon. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Game Plan Coaching Podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please follow the show and share it with a coach who might find it useful. I'd love to hear your feedback and any ideas you have for future guests. You can get in touch through the links in the show notes. Thanks again for listening, and go well in your next coaching session.